Welcome to video number 42 on working with Traincontroller. In the previous video we had a look at the simulation of loading of wagons under a silo. And the task we needed to accomplish was to advance the train for one wagon length at a time. And we did that by giving the engine a certain speed for a certain amount of milliseconds. Well, in many cases that will be accurate enough. But suppose it is not accurate enough for your locomotives, then some additional hardware is needed in the shape of a wagon detector, a sensor that sees the gap between the wagons and can stop the engine at exactly that moment. That's what this video is about. Here we have our little layout, and what is going to happen over here is that this engine is going to drive into block 2 where our loading sequence is going to take place, and then we have to start the cycle of advancing the one wagon and then waiting, advancing, waiting and so on until we reach the end of the train. Let's see how that is done. Let me go into edit mode and double click block 2 to see what happens there. There is an action marker, and that action marker does only one thing actually. It resets my wagons counter to 0. Well, that's good to know. Apparently we are counting, and yes, over here we see it is at a value of 4, but that is the 4 wagon loading of the previous cycle. Maybe our new train that drives in has 12 wagons, so it's just for fun that we are going to count them. What happens next is the train drives on, and at a certain moment it will reach the stop marker, and that means the end of the schedule. So let's have a look at the schedule then. The load wagon schedule has a general tab, and it has a finish operation, which we can look up over here, and the operation is after 5 seconds delay the macro next wagon is started. Alright, let's have a look at that macro next wagon then. That macro next wagon is hidden in the edit menu under the macros. Let's double click it, and then in the operations tab we can see what it does. First it puts my loading switch on. That is, in the previous video this was a signal and it was there just for the visuals to see, yes, a loading cycle is going on. This also is a visual, but it has been made a switch for some reason which we will see in a minute. The next one is the label where the final go to statement will jump back to. Then we increase the wagons counter, just for fun, the counter is there. Then we put our engine to a speed of 6, or whatever speed you like. And then we have a delay of a certain amount of seconds, which in this time is the addition of the driving speed to reach the next wagon, driving time I should say, to reach the next wagon, plus the wagon loading time. It is a combined delay. And then we have our test to see if the loading switch is still on. Under the prerequisite that it is still on, the go to statement is executed and the macro is repeated. In case that the loading switch is turned off, then apparently we have reached the end of the train and it stops. And we will see in a minute how that end of train is detected. You might ask, when do we stop the train when we are advancing one wagon? I don't see that here in the macro. No, that's correct, because that has now become the task of our added sensor. Over here is my wagon sensor. It is actually for this demo purpose not a sensor but a switch. That is because I am going to operate it manually as if a wagon is reaching it. But in reality this should of course be a sensor. Well, what is happening here with this sensor? As soon as it sees a wagon, then we stop the train. Okay, but you might ask, this is a switch, how does it know which train to stop? Well, for that we have this little secret over here. There we can select a block, and of course I selected block number 2. Block number 2 is the block where everything is taking place, so only the train in block number 2 is now going to stop. That is where this block drop down is meant for. So our train is stopping, and then the wagon is loading, and we have seen after 15 seconds the next cycle starts and my train starts to drive again until we see a gap between the wagons. But suppose this was the last wagon, then my sensor will never switch on again. Well, that is why we have introduced these two Flagmen over here. The first one is called a timer, and it is triggered actually by my sensor going off. So the moment the sensor sees the gap between the wagons, or no wagon is ever coming anymore, this Flagman is triggered, and it has a memory. The memory says we are using a timer and we wait for 4 seconds. Yeah, I think 4 seconds is enough waiting time for the next wagon to have reached my sensor. And if after 4 seconds I still don't see a next wagon, then I assume this was the end of the train. Well, if you remember, the trigger was that the sensor is off. So when I put off my Flagman, it will immediately turn itself on again because my sensor is still off at the end of the train. No new wagon will ever be in front of my sensor. It will always be off, and that is where this tick mark comes to the rescue. The forced reset. It means my Flagman will turn itself off even if the trigger is still valid. And that's where this is meant for, and we need it over here, so please don't forget this. Let's have a look at the other Flagman, because this was just a 4-second timer, but this timer is actually going to trigger the last wagon Flagman. Let's have a look. Yeah, the trigger is indeed the timer should be off, but it should only trigger the last wagon under the condition that also my sensor is off. Because, yeah, of course the timer will go off after 4 seconds anyhow, but if there is a new wagon in the meantime, then this last wagon Flagman should not trigger itself. And that's why we have the condition. It is triggered by the timer Flagman only if I still do not see a new wagon. Yes, and then we have an operation over here, and that operation is I'm now going to put my loading switch off. Okay, that's clear. So now let's have a look at that loading switch. In the previous video this was a signal. Why is it a switch now? Well, because also if this was the last wagon, we still should stop our train. So I need an operation here, and a signal cannot have an operation. So that's why I chose now a switch. Yes, we have here the stop operation. I am going to stop the train. Again, this little trick is used that it only is the train in block number 2 that listens to this stop commando. And oh yeah, obviously you could also add over here a delay of a few seconds and then start the next schedule that will drive the train out of this loading area. This is how it works. It is yeah, quite a sequence, quite some intermingled logic. Let's put it to the test. Let's go out of edit mode and let's start the simulator, and let me start the schedule. Yes, it ramps up, accelerates the train to a slow speed of 20, and at a certain moment in time we will reach block 2, and then the action marker is going to put this counter to 0. So let's see if that really happens. As soon as the train is here, it's driving slow, so it takes a little while. Okay. Yeah, there it is, and it has put my counter to 0. My schedule is still running. At the end of the schedule, if you remember, we have a 5-second delay, and then we will start loading. Yeah, there's the 5-second delay, and we are now driving slowly to wait for the sensor to see the first train. Yeah, the first wagon, I should say. Yeah, there it is. and it stopped the train, and it will after 15 seconds start again, and now it will after a certain amount of time see the gap between two wagons. Yeah, there's the gap, and there is the next wagon, and that stopped the train. And that is why you get a higher accuracy now. Yeah, the train has started again, so let me again manually simulate the gap between two wagons. Yeah, that is the gap, and that is the next wagon. And let's do this one more time, but now it is the last wagon, so my sensor is not going to be switched on again. I'm seeing a gap, but it started my timer. No new wagon is coming, so my last wagon Flagman is now triggered, and that stopped stopped the train because my loading switch is now off, which had that stop operation in. So this is the whole sequence. This is how it works, and the use of the sensor, yeah, it gives you a little bit more accuracy. And also it automatically detects the end of the train. And in the previous video, yeah, we had trains of a certain length, and yeah, if that length would change during your driving sessions, then there's a little trouble, of course. Well, thank you for watching. I realize this was a whole lot of intermingling logic, so well, maybe if you really want to build this yourself, maybe better watch it next time. Thank you for watching, and see you maybe in the next video. Bye bye.